praise in this heart of mine. God is good, yes, all the time. Through the darkest night, that light will shine. God is good. God is good all the time. There we go. God is good all the time. But put a song of praise in this heart of mine. God is good all the time. Through the darkest night, His light will shine. God is good. God is good all the time. Yes. If you're walking through the valley and there are shadows all around, do not fear. He will guide you. He will keep you safe and sound. Love His promise to never leave you or forsake you. And His word is true. God is good all the time. He put a song of praise in this heart of mine. God is good all the time. Through the darkest night, His light will shine. God is good. God is good all the time. God is good all the time. He put a song of praise in this heart of mine. God is good all the time. Through the darkest night, His light will shine. God is good. God is good. God is good. He's so good. God is good. He's so good all the time. Good afternoon. See, right there. Good afternoon. I didn't get the morning out. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, quick check-in. Rick says Jan is continuing to do better and better. She's getting around, and so she just needs to get a little steadier before they will spring her from the place. So, spring her from the place. I bet she wants out in a big way. So, that's good. And Missy is on a cruise with Jackie. They went on a cruise together, some girl time. And the guys are having guy time. It's not going all that well from what I hear, but it's having its challenges. And of course, they're in the middle of moving, so it's just one big thing after another. Let's see, what else? What else? I don't know about Rich, don't know where he is. And that's about it. Anybody got any questions or things, issues? Yes?
Nona?
And Nona will be back. I've gotten so used to her not being here, but no, she was in Helsinki the last time I heard from her, which was last night late. Of course, she's about 9 hours ahead of us, and she's due back on the 29th at 2:20 p.m. in LAX. So that's a Tuesday, and so she'll come after actually we've had the class. So
I think that's okay.
yes, Russia was not kind to her. She didn't sign up for the tour, so she wanted to go on her own. And she went to get off the ship, and the customs people said, "Your passport picture doesn't look like you." So they had to take her glasses off, they pulled her aside, they went through all this, and she didn't have anything besides her passport, so she spent the day on the ship. Yes.
I wish she'd asked me. I would have told her you cannot go walking around Russia.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't go on your own, apparently.
You can't.
Yeah, so, yeah, she just thought she could have a day to herself to do some shopping and not be on a tour. So, anyway, but she said she can't wait to get back. She misses everybody, and I understand that because I miss having her too. Anything else? Yes?
Well, I was at Benji's for lunch.
Oh, yeah,
today, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, I know that lady. And it was Nyla.
Oh, it was Nyla. Okay.
Friends walking in.
Benji's is a great place. There's no doubt about it. Anybody else need prayers? You want to tell us anything?
Anything good? We have the poodle got a haircut. She's looking good. She's all trimmed up, looking like a poodle. Okay, I guess we shall proceed then with our schedule. And one of the things that we are going to do is our opening hymn today will be "My Country 'Tis of Thee." And so, if you look inside your bulletin, everybody knows the first verse. None of us seem to really know any of the. There are actually 3 other verses, but this is a 2-verse version. So these are the words that we're going to be singing. And if you'd like to stand, that's up to you.
We may have a problem.
What?
Oh, we didn't have one in here, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's right next to the little symbol.
Oh, okay.
Next to the blue thing, yeah. Yeah, there was no insert. I could fit it on. Okay. So as I said, if you care to stand, you may. If not, you may remain seated.
Can I kneel? Can I kneel?
You can kneel if you want to. Absolutely. We're free. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. Our fathers, God to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, Russell, for getting us the flag this morning. I wasn't able to contact the temple, but Russell found somebody who could bring a flag in for us. So thank you for taking care of that. So let's just sit back now and let's take a breath and relax. And I'd like you to once more feel the energy that we create here. It's pretty amazing. Every day when I come here on Sunday and I see you all sit down and we begin, I feel the energy, and it's always good. So let's just be quiet and feel that something sacred.
Everything I need is right in front of me. Every place I stand is holy ground. Everyone I meet has something beautiful for me. Everywhere I go, it's all around. There is something sacred here, something beautiful, something real and true, something powerful. There is something sacred here, something wonderful that only I can do. There is something sacred here.
And today, as we gather together in a circle of light and love and beauty, we feel that something sacred here. God is here because we are here. Love is here because we are here. And I affirm for each and every one of us, as a spiritual family and as individuals, that we understand our role in the world, that we understand the mission that we are on, that we give thanks every day for our awareness, that we understand that blessings flow to us as long as we are expecting them and believing in them. Today is our day. Today is the day that God has made, that we have made. And let us say together, and so it is. Amen. And our reader today is Joe. Come on up, Joe. Make sure it's good for you.
Good afternoon. telling her how I read the obituaries every morning. And my name's not in there, I have breakfast. And so I explained to her that when I die, I'd like to be cremated, because it'll be my last chance to have my rockin' hot body. Okay, enough with the humor. We're here to honor our military friends, especially those who gave the greatest sacrifice, and also the ones that got severely hurt, and also many times we forget the ladies. We had field nurses, donut dollies, and people that were out there with us, and they were in harm's way as well as we were. And we just appreciated them bringing some of home to us, and can't say enough about them. I'm going to start off with a Talon Memorial 2015 by Reverend Will Hawkins, Major of Combat Talon, 1965 to 1980. Talon was an Air Force battalion. Genesis 47:6 says, "And if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge." Special ops? In the Bible, special ability equals chosen, capable, set apart, those with a certain strength or substance or character, valiant, vigilant, and virtuous. Talon is a special team, from ground support, planning, the crew, and the wives and children. How much, how often they gave, and then gave even more. They are truly special. Colonel Rogers said about the missions, I won't ever forget the first one, the last one, or any ones in between. I am proud to have flown with the first 3 crews on the memorial, and we today can say we won't ever forget the first name, the last name, or any of the ones in between. Exodus 19:4, God said, "You yourselves have seen what I have done, and how I've carried them upon eagle's wings and brought them to myself." Invocation was, let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord Christ, Holy Spirit, we lift our prayers to give thee thanks and praise for your blessings past. Thanks and praise for the blessings to come. You have always been with us, now in our need. This day we gather to remember the legacy of those who have passed on, their families, and with Talon and all the combined forces for peace and freedom worldwide. I believe that those we honor would tell us, we have pierced the darkest skies and flown where others dare not fly. Our mission was to serve and save. We did not return to base and home. If you ask us again if we would go, yes, my brothers, we would gladly go. Do not stand at our grave and weep or cry. We are not there. We do not sleep, did not die. You will find us in the starry sky, upon the sun-kissed sparkling waters, the moonlight skipping through the trees, an eagle soaring, climbing high, the cooling breeze upon your face. We pass on our legacy, keep it bright, hold it high with honor. They'll be within our memories, hearts, evermore. Amen. I don't know how many of you get Art Magazine. That's for us older folk. And in this month's issue was The Buddy I'll Never Forget, a tribute to the veterans. I was going to read one about dog handler with the 25th Division, and Laurel said don't do that because it didn't have a nice ending. So We honor the men and women who served, those who still serve today, and the friendships they forged and more. I'll try to get through this quickly. Lieutenant George Isles by Lieutenant Harold Brown. Excuse me. Harold Brown and his buddy George Isles were two of the nearly 1,000 African-American pilots known as the Tuskegee Airmen in the segregated military of the 1940s. Both men flew with the 99th Fighter Squadron of the U.S. Army Air Corps in Europe. I was on a strafing mission in Germany in March when a locomotive I was shooting at exploded beneath me and I had to bail out. Soon after, I got picked up by the Germans, which was a good thing since the civilians were ready to kill me, and now taken to a POW camp near Nuremberg. Whenever they brought new guys in, all the old inmates would hang on the fence looking for someone from their squadron. Well, that was quite a thing when I saw my buddy George hanging there, almost indescribable. I was alone, frightened to death, and there I see his familiar face. The chances were about 1 in umpteen million. We'd flown together, trained together, went overseas together, and now we're POWs together. And we ended up being the only black guys in our compound. I joked that the first time I was integrated in the military was when I was a POW. Just after 10 days, the Germans marched us and 10,000 other POWs to another camp north of Munich because the Americans were getting close. It took almost 2 weeks to get there, walking in groups of 200, sleeping under the stars. We were always hungry. The Germans didn't even have enough food for themselves. Once a day, they'd bring in the big pots supposed to be soup, which was really nothing more than water. George and I did what we could. Once we cooked up dandelion greens, and instead of opening up 2 cans of Spam, we would open up 1 tin and share it to make our food last much longer. We were in the new prison for about 2 weeks when we started hearing the tanks rumbling. We knew it wouldn't be long. Then on April 29, 1945, General George S. Patton came through with his tanks, knocked down the fences, and liberated us. Isles and I, and everybody else were hollering and screaming, so happy, happy. The war was over for us. Back home, we were stationed together for a while, then eventually led our separate lives. But I've always considered him a big brother. We couldn't have been closer. And with that, we have, in that situation, you become very close to the people you're with. And they have your backs, we have theirs, and they are our brothers. And to all the ones that didn't make it and who got severely hurt, we honor them today.
Thank you, Joe. That's one of the enduring lessons in our history, is that we actually segregated the military and allowed people who were fighting as hard as anybody, put them in separate groups. Yeah, I guess we're still learning, apparently. And someday, yeah, and someday we'll get it. Yeah, someday we'll get it. So today, and this is the reason I chose this topic, it's about that we're all one. It's about togetherness. It's about seeing ourselves as a family, and which fits right in with your reading, of course. So, first of all, summer is almost here, and vacations. People are thinking vacation time. But there's a part of us that never takes a vacation, at least I hope it doesn't. And that is your faith. Can't have your faith take a vacation. There's a phrase which we all know and understand, and it's one of my favorites. Wherever you go, there you are. You take yourself with you, always. So those who think that they're going to go somewhere else and be different are likely to be disappointed. And there's a corollary to that. Wherever you go, there you go. In other words, you've chosen a path. You're walking there. You're on. Your consciousness goes ahead of you, preparing the way. So if you're thinking, and as many of us do, oh, this is going to be so hard. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. If we think that we are going to fail at something, it'll give us a possibility to fail. But one of the things that Joe's reading reminded me of, that when he was quoting Genesis, is Isaiah 40, which is, they shall mount up like eagles with wings of great strength. They shall run and not be weary. They shall fight and not fail. And I've always liked that, because that means your faith lifts you up if you believe you are going to succeed. So you know as well as I do that we see what we expect to see. Some people look at a group and say, oh, look at that group of annoying people. Others look at a group and say, oh, there's some people I could make friends with. Just depends. So it's entirely up to you. So we cannot take a break from being love, because we always want to. Absolutely. I've got my little bracelet on here so I can remember. If I forget, snap it, and then I'm like, oh, I remember now. Of course, we all, how many of you had a consciousness timeout? And you say, oh, I think I've been taking a timeout, and perhaps I ought to get back on track. As a matter of fact, if someone said, I absolutely had to make a note of every judgment that has crossed my mind this past week, it would be a much longer list than I would like to admit, because it just comes flying into your head. But I can take some solace in the fact that I do notice, oh, that's a judgment. That's a judgment. Do I need to stick with that, or could I come, pull back from that? We also all are blessed to have the tools and knowledge to address any timeouts that we might have. We also have the freedom to think what we will and to feel what we will. I, for one, do not want to feel, as some people do, like a leaf. Have you ever seen leaves blowing? If you're not from the Northeast, not so much, but leaves blowing in the street. And in the fall, it's always like that. Just, flurries of leaves. Yes, right? The other people's negativity is like a current. You can be a leaf, and you can be swept on by their negativity. This is where we get mob mentality, by the way. People are swept up in this energy. So we have a choice of whether we're going to adopt other people's negativity, other people's biases, other people's attitudes, other people's beliefs, or could we just be independent? By independent, I don't mean alone. I just mean able to choose and to acknowledge that we are connected. We have the freedom to do that, and it sounds paradoxical, but the greatest freedom of all is not that we can do any darn thing we want, though we can, but that we are free to act from a higher place, from higher ground. We avoid being prisoners of dogmatic thinking. We say no to being mindless followers. Some of us who have belonged to organized religions that are have a more strict path, shall we say, are used to being told to read, learn, listen, obey, and do not question. Well, we would just annoy all those people now because we question everything. So we firmly refuse to be susceptible to groupthink. Right? We don't like groupthink, or empty slogans that appeal to fear and prejudice. We're just not going there. So again, the greatest freedom is to be free of the old thinking of our ego minds that wants to control absolutely everything. So people say, well, I can't really help it. Again, you made me mad, so I said that. Did you have a choice? Absolutely. And we know that, and that's why, again, we have this freedom. We have this freedom to say, I'm not locked into, you tick me off and I cuss at you. We can take a different route, okay? Every time we entertain a thought, every time we have the chance to put out a hand to help, we have a choice, or we can walk on by. In the Science of Mind text, Ernest Holmes wrote, we cannot live a choiceless life. As you know, not making a choice is a choice. And some people think, well, if I just hold very still and don't choose, everything will turn out fine, and that is not true, okay? He said, every day, every moment, every second, we have the right and the necessity to choose what we shall experience. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we find the words of Krishna. I give you these precious words of wisdom, reflect on them, and then do as you choose. Imagine that in a spiritual text. Which, by the way, when I was reading this, reminded me of Ralph. I don't know if any of you ever called Ralph. His answering machine, and his answering was very deliberate. He said his number slowly so that you could take it down if need be. He said, then he finished with, at the sound of the tone, do as you wish. And I just loved hearing that, because he just wasn't going to say, leave a message, just do as you wish. It sounds as if this free will is the cat's pajamas, doesn't it? Does anybody say that anymore, or is it just me? Probably not. But, that means it's good there. Craig, if you don't know what the cat's pajamas is. And why does a cat need pajamas? I have no clue. So, sometimes freedom isn't all it's cracked up to be. The power of choice, Dr. Holmes said, with which we have been endowed is either our greatest blessing or our greatest curse. He was a very smart man. He said, properly understood, it can lift us to the heights or it can drag us to the depths. We are free to choose as we wish, but we must take responsibility for our choices. So there's another important factor to take into consideration, is that all this choosing does not take place in a vacuum. Every single time you make a choice, you send out a ripple into the universe that affects the entire universe. How do you like them apples? But you prefer not, right? You say, I'd like to keep my bad mood to myself, but the fact is you can't keep it to yourself. And every word you say in anger or frustration or fear is felt in the fabric of the universe. So what happens, though, when we're making choices, and our choices collide with someone else's choices? How do you handle that? They've got freedom, too, and so do we. Well, instead of saying, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do with all these other people, well, the ego mind likes the word other, someone else. The me part likes to be separate. The ego wants to say, you know what? What you're doing has nothing to do with me. Even if that person's hurting someone, there are those who will walk on by. Nothing to do with me. That's their choice. They've chosen to be a bully and a victim. What do you think of that? It's a trick question. If those are members of your family, and you have the opportunity to intervene for the sake of peace and safety and welfare, yes, you do intervene. Of course, you don't want to risk your life and jump in. But the idea is and I did a sermon years ago which said, I am my brother's keeper. And I am. There are those who say I'm not, but I am. So, as long as there is another, I don't need to feel any kinship with anyone. I don't have to take into account what anyone else feels. Have you noticed a trend toward that in the world? Some of our people are pretty self-centered, I want to get what I'm going to get, I want to get the money I want to have, I want to tweet whatever I want to tweet. And actually I saw a great sign that said, tweet others as you would like to be tweeted. And I said, I like that. I like that, because some people just think they're, saying all these really creepy things in a vacuum. So I don't have to take into account what everybody else wants in my entire life, but I do need to be aware of the needs that crop up. Some people say, hey, their life is their life, my life is my life. Sounds perfectly reasonable, almost like Byron Katie, doesn't it? There's your stuff, there's my stuff, and there's God's stuff. Well, the fact is, when they say never the twain shall meet, they all meet, okay? And besides, and I really like this, and somebody said this once, they said, I have to admit there are other people in the world, or else who would I blame all my problems on? Because they want to blame their woes on other people. They want to blame people who are so obviously different, like Joe brought up about the Tuskegee Airmen. By virtue of their skin color, the language they speak, the religious path they follow, their country of origin, we can say, well, they're not really like me. Of course, with all this rationalizing going on, we quickly forget we are all passengers on the Mother Earth ship. What happens to one will happen to us all. and that we all come from the same source. Now, I'm not saying we all behave the same. I think you all are probably very well-behaved people out in the world, but some people are very ill-behaved. But there's no reason to ignore what we have in common or throw all of humanity under the bus. Benjamin Franklin, and I had this quote in my head and couldn't remember who said it, so it took me a while. I love the internet. Just stick stuff in there and you find what you want. Benjamin Franklin is popularly quoted as having said, "We must all hang together, or assuredly we will hang separately." And I've always liked that, because if we don't stick together, we have no strength. It makes sense. It's a reasonable and logical summation of a key principle that escapes some people who think that what hurts others does not hurt me. Do you think that's true? No. What hurts others does hurt me. Fortunately, we have a number of stories and parables to illustrate this idea of connectedness. One of them I came across, I think I told it to you about 6 years ago. It was in some notes I was looking at a file, and I thought, oh, I like that story. It's quite appropriately entitled, "That's Not My Problem." So once upon a time, on a farm somewhere, a little mouse looked through a crack in the wall to see the farmer and his wife opening a package. He was very curious. Could it be some new and yummy food? Could it be cheese? Sadly, as the wrapping came off, horror of horrors, mousetraps. Lots and lots of mousetraps. This could not be good. So he scurried along his little tunnels, he emerged in the farmyard, and he began calling in great dismay to his fellow animals, "Woe is me, there are mousetraps in the house, mousetraps in the house," and wringing his little paws. The chicken clucked and scratched and raised her head and said, "You know what, Mr. Mouse, I can see where that would be a grave concern to you. But frankly, it's of no consequence to me. After all, I'm a chicken. Mousetraps don't endanger my life." So the mouse turned to the pig, because pigs are very smart. He asked if the pig could think of any solutions. The pig said, "I'm very sorry for you, Mr. Mouse, but, there's nothing I can do about it. Of course, you're in my prayers." End of conversation. Next, the poor mouse tried the cow. She shook her head. "That's like a total bummer, Mr. Mouse," because she was a California cow. "But the only one who's endangered is you, duh. This is clearly a rodent problem, not a cow problem." And last of all, he went to the wise old barn owl. They're supposed to be wise. And the owl said, "You think I'm worried about your petty little mousetrap problem? Do you know how much more important I am in this entire ecosystem of this planet? What's one mouse more or less? I eat creatures like you for dinner." So the little mouse returned through his tunnels, very dejected, head down. He was determined to face the traps alone if it meant providing food for his little mouse family. But he thought he'd sleep on it and tackle it the next day. And that night, a very sharp sound broke the stillness of the farmhouse, kind of like the sound of a mousetrap being sprung. The farmer's wife rushed to see the mouse that had met its fate in their trap, but as luck would have it, in the dark, she didn't notice until far too late that the trap had caught the tail of a venomous and really pissed off snake. In fact, it promptly bit her. She had a very bad reaction. The farmer phoned for a doctor and put her to bed. The poor woman had a high fever. And of course, everyone knows what you use to treat a fever, right? Chicken soup. The farmer took his hatchet out to the farmyard for the main ingredient. Scratch one roaster. Thought the mouse tragedy could not touch her. She was wrong. So despite constant treatment, the farmer's wife stayed sick, and lots of neighbors came to sit with her around the clock, and they needed to be fed. And since there was no clever spider named Charlotte to spell out the pig's name, poor Porky got to be ham and bacon, as in that's all, folks. Sadly, the farmer's wife still didn't get well. So many people came from all over the county, to the funeral. The only way to feed them was with a big beef barbecue. Bye-bye, Bessie. Definite bummer for her. As for the owl, well, he was so busy congratulating himself and preening his feathers over not becoming entangled in the whole chicken-pig-cow drama, He fell out of his nest up in the rafters and broke his little owl neck. That's how it turns out. The moral of the story is that when we see or hear someone facing a problem and instantly presume it has nothing to do with us, we might want to think again. Life is a single, what's it?
Very good story.
Thank you. Life is, I'm sorry about all the death, but what can I say? By the way, the mouse lived. The mouse was good. Life is a single unity. Once we get past the, what are my needs, what are my desires, what are my preferences, what do I want, we find we are in this together. And that's a more spiritually aware one. And we don't seek to make other people wrong for theirs. See, this is the thing we really have a problem with, and some people don't quite get it, that whatever their faith, whatever their beliefs, whatever they are, he's pulling on my microphone cord, just see if, you're just seeing if I thought there was a snake there, weren't you? I know, thank you for getting it out from under my feet. When we realize that other people are entitled to believe what they believe, and we're entitled to believe what we believe, they don't require our approval. We can see, and we've done this with our children especially, that is such a bad idea. And they say, but I'm going to do it. And we say, okie dokie. Because they're going to do it. And they're going to find out if there's a pitfall there, which there is, because we know there's one there. But we don't need to make what doesn't work for us. For example, organized religion does not work for me. Catholicism, being a Methodist, being all these, it does not work for me. That doesn't make them wrong. Doesn't make them bad. Doesn't make them evil. Doesn't make them stupid. They believe what they believe. And again, I will tell you, I don't care if people walk around saying, Jesus is Lord and being a born again, if they're doing good stuff in the world, if they're helping people, if they're doing, going and feeding people, I don't care what they say. They are showing love. Love doesn't have a brand name. So there's some conflict, of course, but between these groups. But conflict is part of the territory because we become even more clear about what's important to us, don't we? Sometimes we think that material things are important, and then someone in our life is ill or threatened with leaving us, and we suddenly think, I don't care about all the stuff. I don't care about all the opinions. I don't care about all the editorials. I care about the heart. I care about this person. So sometimes we have conflicts which seem to have no solutions, and then we have to not just take the high road, but the really, really high road. How high? Well, in his book, Spiritual Economics, Eric Butterworth wrote this powerful insight. He said, you need to get the view from the top. The higher you stand, the more you can see. So before you react in negativity to people, conditions, or things, lift up your eyes unto the hills. By the way, he is not talking about rolling your eyes heavenward in a gesture of exasperation. Saying things to yourself like, God help him, this person's an idiot. No, Mr. Butterworth is not suggesting that regardless of appearances of conflict or limitation, whatever they might be, we have to climb up here and look. If you've been in business and you have to make a business decision, does an executive who makes a business decision want to look at one little report? No. Like to look at the financials, like to look at the overall employment at the company, like to look at all kinds of things before deciding, okay? So we have to decide creatively, lovingly, and with as little anger and judgment as possible what is best for us to do. One of the best things in getting there is show me the way. I love that. Show me the way. And as I've said to you before, you can start each day that way. Show me the way. Tell me or share with me or guide me where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, and with whom I'm supposed to speak. And there you go. So that higher perspective, we find some commentary on that in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, most people aren't really fond of this passage, I should warn you. Love your enemies. I know it's going, ouch. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who spitefully use and persecute you. What do you think? It's pretty clear. There's not a lot of ambiguity. It doesn't say if you feel like it. Or if what they did isn't too bad. So first, the thing we're asked to do in the Gospel of Matthew, this is the suggestion from Jesus, we're asked to love. We're asked to
Be loved.
That means accepting and valuing other human beings simply because they exist, not because we like what they do. Besides, whoever's challenging us is sometimes holding up a mirror to show us where we do not feel connected to all of life. And by the way, that usually ticks us off. But we don't have to stay ticked off. We may not be able to say it out loud, but we can think it, we can say, and it's another line I love, you know what? I got this. I got this. Getting back to our scripture, we are also asked to bless those difficult people, because in blessing them, we are actually claiming the good for them, because they can't do so. They're just not able to. We are also asked to do good. Sometimes when we are in a place of hurt, our instinct is to lash out, to return the hurt. Thank heaven we have that great alternative on standby, the eternal question, what would love do? To help us get out of that, to find the highest and best response. Lastly, we are asked to pray for whoever has hurt us. How easy is that? It ain't easy. And depending on the level of hurt, it can feel impossible. So when we pray for them, I don't mean praying things like, I pray for the earth to open up and swallow them whole. Darn. It's tempting. And what most people don't know is that the prayer is for us. The prayer is for us. We're praying to see the wholeness in ourselves and the divine light that shines through us. We're praying for strength and wisdom to be love in expression. So these are the steps that take us to the high ground, up there in the hills. Love them, bless them, do good, and make every thought a prayer. You will notice that none of these options infringes on other people's free will, tells them what to believe, judges them at all. None of these makes us weak or vulnerable. None of these harm anything, except sometimes our egos don't really take it very well. But just remember, no one can make us be less than we truly are. Do you feel like your relationships in your life that sometimes have made you be less than you really are? Or behave in a way that is less than you really are? But no one can make us hate, no one can make us judge, no one can make us condemn, or dismiss, or be dismissed out of hand. And we do not have to have the upper hand, just stand in the upper levels. So in closing, I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes, because this addresses the issue of we cannot live our lives from a perspective of who's right and who's wrong. Because depending on where you stand, the answer is always different. So this is a quote from Rumi. Beyond the ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. So next Sunday, I will meet you here. Namaste. Thank you. Would someone like to come and read the affirmation, please? Anybody? Don't all jump to your feet at once. Here, Babs. This is excellent. Thank you. The quotation, beyond the ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there.
So if you would join me. I am one with all that is, both seen and unseen. It is my conscious intention to be a bringer of light, an emissary of love, and a voice of peace. Today, I live my life thoughtfully, harmoniously, and compassionately, as I craft a beautiful vision of the world and let the love in my heart breathe life into it. And so it is.
Thank you. Thank you. I got kind of carried away with adverbs, I admit, but I like adverbs, so we did that a lot. The song I'm doing today is one that I introduced last year for Memorial Day, and I kind of love how we just keep on making new traditions at Heartlight. And this is a song of the era when Joe was serving, and possibly when Rick was serving. I don't know what his years were, but this is from the 60s. So here it is.